Hey everyone, Greg Marchand here from the Service Sales Academy with another episode of the Virtual Instructor-Led Training Program. And this time I want to talk to you about dispatching repair orders. Now, I wish we had 2 hours worth of video here to talk to you about dispatching because it's not as simple as I tried to make it here. Okay, so just let me say that right up front. I'm going to talk to you about some considerations that you need to consider when you're dispatching repair orders. There's a lot more to it, and a lot of it's quite intuitive, quite frankly. The mission when it comes to dispatch is to provide consistent workflow to the shop. And in order to do that and make sure everybody's making money, right, which is another part of the mission, we've got to match the right job to the right technician. And if we can match the right job to the right technician, then we can most likely ensure customer satisfaction. So we want consistent workflow, so we maximize the amount of money that we're all making. And we want the right job to go to the right technician to help us ensure customer satisfaction. Because at the end of the day, it's all about customer satisfaction. With dispatch, there are a ton of variables, right? There's the process that you're going to use within your shop and at the service counter, and even the individual process that you as a human might go through. There's the technician skill sets that you have available to give these jobs to, because every technician in your shop is going to have a different skill set, and they should have a different skill set. I'll mention more on that in a little bit. And then there's the work mix. And we've got some control over process and technician skill, but the work mix, that's going to vary day to day, right? Tremendously. And then we've got the individual technicians and who needs to hit what hours to get to their bonus. That can be a big deal in some shops. Other shops, if they're all paid hourly, no big deal. But sometimes it's about the number of hours the technicians get handed so they can hit their bonus. There's also, when does the customer need the vehicle back, right? When does this work need to be done by? Because if we're going to think about dispatch, it's a little more than just right job, right technician. It's right job, right technician. Oh, and when does it have to go? And what kind of skill sets do we have in the shop, and where's the overlap? And then to further convolute everything, what about parts delivery schedules? You can even throw weather in, during the winter months. I mean, so there's all kinds of variables, and there's many that I haven't touched on here. Some of these variables we can control. All right, we can control who gets what job, right? That's dispatch. We can also control, in my opinion, 80% of what work is scheduled and when. Now, that's a skill set that we've discussed in telephone selling. It's a skill set we've discussed in the scheduling, the work video. A lot of what gets scheduled, we have some control over. Yeah, there's still some walk-in stuff that we can't necessarily control, but 80% of what comes to us and when it comes to us, we can control. And then, of course, we can control the process that we use. And that's going to be really, really important, because that process is going to be a work in progress all the time, because things change. And we'll talk more about that in a minute too. There are a lot of things that you cannot control. Those unexpected delays, the wrong part got sent, or the parts delivery guy got lost, or rusty bolts, challenging diagnostics, something went wrong we just didn't expect. Whatever it might be. There's the walk-ins, and again, that's to some extent. You can, and I don't want to use that train word. Shops say, oh, we train our customers to drop off. Let's not talk about training customers. Let's talk about encouraging customers to not walk in and to drop their automobile off. And then you can't control the men and women that don't come to work or the customers that don't show up. So there's all these variables that interact with the dispatch process, and all of these variables make dispatch so that it's not real cut and dry, okay? But we have enough control that I would say probably 95% of the time we can do a pretty darn good job with dispatch. Let's talk first about the process that you use in dispatching. Now, this used to be really easy because everybody had paper, and we would print their repair orders out and we would stack them in a technician bin, or some people would create a pile, or some people had the slip covers and they would hang them on a board, or they would stick them under the technician's name. And then electronic came along. And in the independent repair shop world, there is not a true electronic dispatch system that I have found yet. What most shops are doing is they're taking the electronic inspection systems and they're creating an electronic dispatch process with these systems, which is, it's somewhat awkward. It can be done though, and it can be done really efficiently, and I've watched that, and I keep track of that on a daily basis with a couple of my consulting clients, and they've done a really good job with it. It's not perfect. It is a little bit awkward, but if you want to go paperless, then you can adapt some of these systems and turn them into an electronic dispatch system. Paper does create a lot more movement. When I say movement around the shop, what I mean is we've got to walk to get the paper. It can't be sent to us. And so paper, depending on whether it's, how you look at it, whether it's the service counter having to take the papers, print the papers, go to the printer, get them out of the printer, go put them in a bin or put them in a dispatch rack or wherever they got to go. And then the technicians have to come get them. And so there's a lot more walking around, a lot more movement, and some would say wasted time and wasted efficiency and productivity. Paper, in my mind, can also create more communication errors. I'm a big fan of the electronic thing, and because I've seen it work. The problem with electronic is this learning curve is so steep, and there are so many moving pieces to it that it can be a task for some to wrap their arms around. But whether you use electronic or you use paper, a lot of these principles are much the same. We have to balance the right job to the right technician with the need to get the work done quickly. So what I mean by that is, if I'm your diagnostic technician and you've got a maybe a headlight in-op job that comes in, you're not going to give it to me if I'm buried in work. Just because I might be the right technician for that diagnostic job, and we've got a couple of other technicians that are mostly, undercar specialists, that doesn't mean that they can't do basic diagnostics, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to give it to the technician that's free, because look, right now it just looks like it could probably be a headlight bulb, or maybe it's a headlight socket, maybe it's a headlight assembly, but you know what? Some average diagnostic skill can probably get it diagnosed. So we're not going to hold that job off for the diagnostic technician if we need to get it done, right? So it's a bit of a balance. You've also, no matter how you're going to dispatch, you've got to understand your technician's skill sets, and I'll talk about that briefly at the end of this program. That's a little bit more of a challenge, but you've got to get a feel for who can do what and how productive are they in doing what. Again, that's not 100% every time, but you've got to get a real feel for, is it okay for me to give Johnny Q Technician this engine job, or is it going to be 8 days, 9 days, 10 days before it's done if I do give it to he or she? And then you've got to understand too, how much time is generally involved in some of these jobs and how productive are my technicians. It's all a juggling act, and for each individual shop, these pieces are going to vary, right? Every technician skill set's a little bit different. If you're a brand new service advisor, you're not going to know anybody. You're not going to know what their abilities are. And so you're going to have to ask certain questions. And this is where sometimes a shop foreman comes into play, or somebody's been around for quite a while and knows the skill sets in the shop, can provide some guidance for you. So it's all a juggling act. It's all a balancing act depending on your personnel and your process. I'm going to use an example shop here. Let's just say that we've got one single master diagnostic technician, somebody that we might call an A-level technician. This is somebody that's got considerable experience. They've got, I'd say at least 5 years quality experience, probably 20 to 30 years experience. They've got a really, really strong diagnostic skill set. They're really, really good at what they do. They're probably a really, really highly productive technician. They are the go-to person in the shop. And then we've got 3, I'll call them undercar specialists. These are B-level technicians. These are the men and women that are really good at doing the ball joints and the control arms and the exhaust work and the brake work and that type of stuff. Maybe they got some diagnostic skill sets, but they're not super well developed in terms of computers or electronics or maybe check engine lights. They're really good at removing and replacing parts, and they're really highly productive usually because they're good with their hands. And then we've got a couple of oil change specialists, lube techs, if you will, and these are C-level technicians. Now, when it comes to dispatching to these three types of technicians. You've got the master diagnostic guy or girl, right? Don't ever forget, they still have to make money. And I've watched shops where there was that one go-to person where they had to do virtually all the diagnosis because the skill set wasn't there in anybody else. But the problem was they still had to make their money. They still had to turn their hours to make the money, because don't ever forget, in terms of dispatch, technicians are where our money comes from. They're the ones that make our money. Yes, we sell some parts, but we sell more time than parts, and gross profit is higher on the time we sell than the parts we sell. So even your best technician, they still have to make money. Understand, talk with them. How can you best help them make money while leveraging this advanced skill set that they have? Have that conversation. Have it first with the shop owner, maybe. Have it with a next in command that's over them, maybe. Or if you have to, have it with them so that you understand. They still have a job to do. They still need to be a productive technician, but they also have to do a majority of the diagnostics. The other thing that didn't get on this slide is that they're also your most expensive technician generally, and therefore they hurt your gross profit. So if you're a service advisor who gets paid on gross profit, you don't want them doing necessarily all the easy work. And I know it sounds crazy, but you need them to be doing the more advanced stuff that others can't do. They cannot get all of the diagnostics, but they need to get the tougher diagnostics. And then the shop process has to allow somehow for some of that dispatch of diagnostic work to go to the B-level technicians. Not all of it, not the advanced stuff certainly, but some of it has to trickle out to the B-level technicians because it provides for their growth, their education, their training, and it takes a little bit of pressure off the master diagnostic technician and allows them still to make some money. Now, the undercar specialists or the B-level technicians, this is where the majority of your gross profits are, believe it or not. You know, shops will sometimes come to me and they're all proud that they've got a shop full of master technicians. And inwardly I groan, because that's the last thing in the planet that you want. Because you can't have high gross profits with a whole bunch of A-level technicians. They make too much money. They're too good. They command too much of a salary. The B-level technicians are where your money really, really gets made, because they generally are highly productive. And they're doing the high gross profit work for you. So therefore, I want you to keep the B-level technicians busy 100% of the time. This is where the majority of your money gets made. They should be given as little diagnostic work as possible, but still be given some so that they continue to grow. Because you can't just fill your shop with A, B, and C level technicians and just say, boom, there we are. No, because good people come and go all the time. And the master diagnostic person is going to be out of the shop on vacation someday when you really need he or she. So you have to keep somebody in the pipeline that's growing their diagnostic skill all of the time, but you've got to keep the focus on gross profit and productivity. So they should be given little diagnostic work. It's okay to give them some oil changes, but we really want the oil changes going to the lube techs if possible. Okay? But remember, with your B-level techs, this is where you make the most money in the shop. So be really conscious of the work that you're giving them. Don't be burdening them with a lot of diagnostic work. Have a plan for who's going to grow their diagnostic skill next, and have a mentoring plan and a training plan in place with management to help grow that person, so you can keep most of these undercar specialists really busy all the time. And then there's the C-level techs. These are the individuals that primarily do the oil changes. They'll do light maintenance as they're qualified for. They'll do tire rotation as they're qualified for. And this is a group of technicians that I see a huge skill set range in. Unfortunately, I see some C-level technicians that are actually probably more qualified to do more than they are. And then I see some that we try to grow and they're just not ready to go anywhere. So again, you've got to have a conversation with management, depending on how big a shop you are. This could mean the ownership, this could be the service manager, but have a conversation as to what C-level tech gets what work, and is there a growth plan for the C-level techs? You might move an oil change a lube tech person into a regular bay at some point and feed them brake jobs. Feed them some courtesy inspection work just to start to grow their skill set. So again, these lines aren't firmly drawn. There are gray areas between the A, B, and C level technicians, because there's times when the master diagnostic technician is going to have to do an oil change. That's just the way it is. Remember, we're balancing right job, right technician with when the work has to get done. And if we need it done now, we need it done now. Okay? Best practices are to understand every technician's production capability. What allows them to be as productive as they absolutely possibly can be? That's where you'll keep the workflow moving in the shop. And if you can assign right job to the right technician and they're highly productive, you've got a darn good operation going. If you can schedule work based on that production, some shops just schedule work based on the overall productivity of the shop. Other shops will dial it right down to how much work can we schedule per technician based on their individual productivity. And now we're really getting into efficiency and productivity and maximizing the amount of money a repair shop can make, all through scheduling and dispatch. If you can dispatch by production and promise time and balance those, then you're going to keep that shop workflow flowing and everybody's going to be making some money. Now, with electronic systems, you can always pre-dispatch work. As soon as that repair order is written up and it moves into the courtesy inspection system and it's been assigned to a technician, that work is essentially dispatched. If you're still using paper repair orders, and you can pre-print repair orders, say at 3 o'clock this afternoon for tomorrow morning, do so. Load those work bins, load those tablets so that I as a technician see what work I have coming. It will create urgency with me. It will increase my productivity. It'll give me a more positive attitude because I know I'm going to be making some money, and it may even get me into work earlier and stay later, and everybody is happier. All right, so keep those best practices in mind and never, ever, ever forget. The ultimate goal here is customer satisfaction, period. That's what we're after. If we don't have customer satisfaction, we don't have customers, and we don't have a quality operation. Now, oh boy, technician skill set. Technician skill set it's a challenge because it's different with every one of us. Understand what the upper limits of each technician is. All right, understand what each technician can really do in terms of pushing their limits. And this means for diagnostics, for maybe alignments, or are they highly productive? Are they highly productive, or are they moderately productive? Are they low productivity? Do they have a skill set? Can they really bang out alignments all day long? Can they really, they can do tie rod ends and ball joints and control arms, and they're really, really good at this stuff, and they're really highly productive. Okay, so their productivity limit is really, really high when it comes to this. But for diagnostics, yeah, they can do it, but it takes them a little bit longer. And that's okay. But you've got to understand what these limits are in order to properly dispatch the jobs. Every shop should have a diagnostic process for monitoring how much time got spent by a technician, for helping out a technician during diagnostics that maybe is not a super strong diagnostic technician, and for recognizing when somebody's in over their head. We've got that video I mentioned earlier, the selling mill diagnosis video. Go check that out. There's some good material in there on a suggested process for maintaining an awareness of who's doing what in terms of diagnostics, so that we don't get somebody 8, 9, 10 hours into a diagnosis before we realize, oh my goodness, they're in way over their head. They can't deal with this. This is craziness. We want to catch it quick. We want to catch it in the first hour or two. And then we want to be able to provide them some support in terms of what to do next, in terms of learning and training and growing and mentoring, so that we can grow diagnostic skill sets, so we have more people to dispatch diagnostic work to, but at the same time, we're not hurting our productivity and the gross profit that we have to make. Check out that video. Now, productivity and quality. In general, I like to say that productivity plus quality can be an indicator of skill. In other words, if I have a technician that's really highly productive, they bang the work out, they're fast, and you know what? They never have a comeback. or if they have a comeback, it's once a quarter, and it's usually something silly, then I can probably say I've got a really high level of skill in this individual. So if the technician's highly productive with certain jobs and the quality of workmanship is there, they're skilled. And that's how I judge that. If they have a lot of comebacks, but they're really fast, they're not highly skilled. They're fast but sloppy, and that's not highly skilled. If they're not real productive, but they always get it right, that's a different challenge, right? They might never have a comeback, but they might also never give me more than 30 hours of work a week. That's a different issue. Then maybe in terms of dispatch, I need to be more careful about what I give them. Yeah, I can give them some diagnostic work because I know they're going to get it right, and that makes me feel warm and fuzzy, but I'm going to have to mix in some real gravy work that we can make some money on because I need them to keep their hours up. So it's a real balance between productivity and quality and productivity and diagnostics, and you've always got to be juggling this. And as a new service advisor, that can feel overwhelming sometimes. But have the conversation with others in your organization about who is really good at what, and pay attention to who gets comebacks, who seems to really do a lot of work but never get comebacks. And make mental notes of this. And over time, you will learn who you can give certain jobs to and who you probably shouldn't. And then you're going to start paying attention to your gross profit. And you'll further modify your processes to maximize your gross profit, your productivity, and your quality workmanship. Don't forget to push the limits. All right? And I shouldn't say don't forget. Don't hesitate to push the limits. You've got to, if you're going to develop, you have to push the limits a little bit. Choose the right time to do it though. Choose those less than busy times, if possible, to have technicians push their limits. I like to give diagnostic challenges to my B-level technicians in the winter months when we're slower. And I know that they're not going to hit their hours anyway. We just don't have that kind of work on the schedule. But let's use that slower time to develop the technicians. Because you know what? When July hits and my master diagnostic guy or girl has to go out on vacation, I say have to. They want to, right? I say they have to. When they're gone and we need somebody to fill in, we've got somebody that was trained, that learned during the slower months, didn't cost us anything, right, in terms of productivity and gross profit, because we were slow anyway. So choose those times to grow those skill levels and to push those limits, and always make sure that there's guidance present when you're asking a technician to push their limits. Don't just say, oh, you can do it, I got faith in you. No, have a plan. Use the shop owner, use the shop foreman, use the best technician you have in the shop. Talk to them about it and say, look, listen, next July when you're out on vacation, I need Johnny Technician to be able to do some basic check engine light diagnosis that I can't push off till you get back. I've got this thing coming in. I'm going to dispatch it to him. Can you get with him and talk about a plan for diagnosing it? Okay, so push their limits, have a plan to do it, and try to do most of your development during those slower times. Now, something that always comes up, something that we would call cherry picking, is this favorite job thing. Look, technicians have favorite jobs, and some technicians have favorite jobs to a fault. They don't want to do anything but whatever this favorite job is. Just because I like a job doesn't mean I should be the only one to get it, however. It's part of that balance. You can't just give everybody their favorite work, even though they're really good at it and they like to do it and you're trying to be their buddy. But you need to dispatch not just based on who likes to do what and who's good at doing what, but it's got to be balanced with who needs the hours, who needs to develop skill, and when the work has to go. Okay? And really, when the work has to go is your top priority. It really is, because that results in customer satisfaction, because it's all about pleasing the customer. Your second priority is the skill set that job's going to go to, because I might get it done in time, but if it's not right, I'm going to upset the customer anyway. So I've got to pick the technician that's got the best skill set for this job that can get it done by that amount of time. All right, whether they like the job or not doesn't necessarily matter. And then last but not least, we've got the work mix, right? These are some of these variables that you can control. Now, the work mix is all about scheduling, and you've got to have really good, solid scheduling practices if you're going to have any control whatsoever over your work mix. I strongly encourage shops to schedule by production. That means you've got to track your production. That means you've got to track production by technician so that we can understand how much work can we take in and what kind of work can we take in on any given day. We don't want to fill days with just diagnostic work. We also don't want to fill days with just oil changes. Is it going to happen? Yes, it will. But if we understand who has what level of productivity, then we can know how much work they can handle at any given time. And then the other piece that comes along with scheduling is if we can get courtesy inspections and diagnostics done as early as in the day as possible, then we can get the parts ordered, we can get the customers okay to do the job, we can get the job done, and that helps our workflow throughout the day. All of that is helped by encouraging drop-offs. And if we can drop off vehicles early, it will significantly help your dispatch. It will help to even out who you can give these jobs to. Because now I've got the vehicle at 8 in the morning, I promised it at 5 o'clock, I've got 8-9 hours to get it to the appropriate person. Really, I don't. I've probably got 4 or 5 hours to get it to the appropriate person. But it takes the pressure off the service counter and off the technicians, and it eliminates some of your chaos. Not to mention, the sales argument for encouraging drop-offs is that drop-offs get more sales because you've got the automobile. Most of this is a word track, and what I encourage you in all the sales videos that we've watched so far, I hope you've watched, I've produced, is to say to the customer, if you can drop it off first thing in the morning for me, if you can drop it off before work for me, it will allow me to get the problem diagnosed, get the estimate to you, get the parts here, and get the vehicle repaired in a short amount of time, as short amount of time as possible. So don't just say, I need you to bring it in. Say, if you can drop it off, the earlier the better for me. It will allow me to diagnose, get the parts here, and get it repaired for you as quickly as possible. So encourage drop-offs. It'll significantly help your dispatch process. And then there's communication. And we could go on for hours about communication. The constant communication with technicians and with each other at the service counter is what's going to help you fine-tune your approach to dispatch. Dispatch is not one of these things that we can just drop a process in your lap and say, here, do this, follow this, and you'll be fine. There's too many variables, as we've seen. There's too many nuances to it. There's the skill set and the work mix, and that's going to change every day. The work mix will. And so you've got to constantly communicate. Shops that have weekly meetings do really well with this because they're always fine-tuning the process. They can always have the conversation. Some shops have daily meetings, which really helps with dispatch because it tells everybody where they're at. Everybody knows what hours everybody else has. Everybody knows what work is coming in today or what work got held over from yesterday. And we can really fine-tune the dispatch process with daily morning meetings. And when I say meetings, have those meetings in the morning. Start before work. You'll be surprised how much it will help not only communication, but help your dispatch process as well. Quick summary, folks. The goal, right tech, right job with customer satisfaction. That's right. Maximize your profits by keeping the highly productive B-level technicians busy as much of the time as you possibly can. And then consider those daily meetings so that the communication is constant and it will really work to help you fine-tune your dispatch process. Until next time, you keep up the great job and never stop learning.